Hello and welcome to this Leeds Digital Festival session hosted by Heard Consulting. Thank you so much for making time in your day to join us. We really appreciate that. This is actually the fifth session that Heard have hosted as part of the Leeds Digital Festival, and all of our previous sessions are going to be on our YouTube channel. You want to find out some more about the really relevant and lively topics that we've been discussing during this Leeds Digital Festival, you can go back and catch up on all of those. Thank you everybody who has joined us. We are going to be using the chat as part of this session. I'm going to be posing some questions for you. I want to hear your experiences as well. So to make sure that everybody knows where the chat is on Google Meet, I'd love it if you put where you're joining from today, where you are in the world, so we can see who's here and where you're joining from. This session is also being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel as well. So let us know in the chat where you're joining from. Leeds, yeah, I expected to see that on the list, so thank you very much. Elliot, a few people in Sheffield. I'm also in Sheffield this morning, so thank you everybody. A little bit about Heard. We are an award-winning product analysis and change and transformation consultancy, and we're proud to be trusted by global leading universities, central government departments, FTSE 100 companies, as well as fast-growing tech businesses. And our clients typically come to us and engage with us when they're starting something new, need our help getting a delivery back on track, or want to deliver something, or looking to grow their in-house capacity. So that's us. But why we're here today is to talk about continuous improvement. The title of this session is that it's time to get serious about continuous improvement. And I'm going to address why I think it's that time to get serious, and then how we might go about doing that. So in this session, we're going to talk about what's been going on, why organisations haven't been as serious about continuous improvement as would be valuable for them. And we're going to talk about what continuous improvement is and how we can actually go about implementing it and getting the benefits from continuous improvement that our organisations very dearly need. So, as I said, there's going to be a chance for you to put forward your questions and contributions in the chat. When you see this symbol appearing on the slide, I'll make reference to it as well, but I'd love to hear your input and thoughts at those points. What has been going on? So over the last few years, there has been an explosion of technology, which meant that a lot of organisations have invested heavily in something that we refer to as digital transformation. Digital transformation usually requires a big investment of money, particular resources to be made available, and the appropriate culture to be able to get the benefits of that digital transformation. In the last couple of years, organisations have had to scale back their ambitions, sometimes reducing the size of their workforce and certainly reducing the amount of focus and money they've got available for digital transformation. And this is where continuous improvement comes in. It was very much kind of in fashion and used by a lot of different organisations about 10 to 15 years ago. And some organisations have continued to use continuous improvement as their route to innovation, staying relevant in the market and continued growth. But a lot of organisations have switched away from the idea of continuous improvement and focused on digital transformation. So you might be thinking, well, what is so bad about digital transformation? Now, I know that there's going to be a lot of people on this call that have been involved in digital transformation, either part of delivering that change or been on the receiving end, been a user of some of the changes that have gone on in your organisations. So I really want to pose this question to you. What is so bad about digital transformation? What can go wrong? What are some of the drawbacks? Please put in the chat any observations that you've had about digital transformation. Some of the issues that I've already highlighted is that it has a massive cost to organisations, can be really disruptive to our day-to-day operations. Natalie's technical unknowns, which end up costing the company more than was expected. Yeah, when we don't understand our technical landscape very well, we can end up having to move data around, duplicating data, having to create far more integrations than we were expecting. and things that we just didn't anticipate. One-off projects, rather than a change culture. We think that the projects that we implement, this is going to solve all of our problems, but unfortunately investment in one area usually just highlights that we need to make investment in other areas as well. Lack of joined up thinking between departments. One organisation's got the money, they've got the funding, they're really excited, but they don't always communicate it very well. That can lead to disjointed organisations and digital transformation not producing the benefits that we would like. Lack of digital literacy, that is so important. A lot of people are really terrified when they hear that an organisation is going to be implementing new products and services and going through this process of digital transformation. It can be really frightening, and organisations don't always make the level of investment that they need to bring everyone on that journey and increase the level of digital literacy and digital skills within the organisation. And one of my favourite issues being highlighted there, jumping to a solution. The CEO's seen something work in another organisation or where they used to previously work, so they automatically think it's going to work here. We've decided on a solution before we've really understood the problem and the requirements. So we've got really good grip on what are the problems with digital transformation. And so I really want to position continuous improvement not in opposition to digital transformation, but a realistic option that we should always be considering instead of large scale, big bang change and major investment in digital products and services. So what is continuous improvement? So we're going to break this into 3 parts. First of all, what it is the ongoing process of making small and incremental changes and improvements to our products, services and processes. So this is seeking to make that incremental improvement over time, not making a kind of massive or breakthrough improvement all at one time. And why we might do this is to enhance our efficiency, quality or performance or other aspects of the organisation in this gradual and continuous manner. And how we're going to do that is how we make any change is by identifying the areas for improvement, analysing those, implementing the changes, and then critically reviewing the results, seeing what's worked, what's had an impact, what's had a benefit for our organisation. And if that sounds a little bit abstract, a bit hard to get your head around, I want to draw your attention to the marginal gains theory, which became really famous a few years ago when British cycling started being really dominant on a global scale. They adopted this theory of marginal gains, which is about making 1% improvements in a whole load of different areas that really add up to big changes and big benefits for the organisation. So if we think about a typical organisation that has lots of processes, HR, finance processes, if we were to make small changes and if our staff felt empowered to suggest these small improvements and changes across the organisation on an ongoing basis in a controlled way, we can assume that that will quickly add up to big benefits for the organisation. I want to talk about the route to continuous improvement, and we can use to guide us the CMMI levels. The CMMI levels are go from 0 to 5, and they can be applied to pretty much anything, where 0 is we're not very good at that, but we'd like to be, and 5 is we're industry leader, we really couldn't get any better at this. This is a real area of focus for us. So I'm going to talk about what these different levels are defined as in relation to continuous improvement. And it's really helpful that CMMI has defined these different levels. It means we can apply benchmarking across industry and in different organisations. So it starts off here with a 0 level of maturity, where continuous improvement may or may not get done, improvements may or may not get identified, and sometimes that work gets completed and sometimes not. Through to level 1, where continuous improvement work is unpredictable and sometimes reactive. Improvement work sometimes gets completed, but it might be delayed, deprioritised or over budget. Level 2 is where individual improvements are understood, captured, prioritised, planned, carried out, measured and controlled. That's a really good place to be. That's where we're going to focus most of our time in the rest of this session. I'm just going to mention briefly the other levels, going up to level 5, which level 5, the highlight here is that it provides a platform for agility and innovation. We talk about innovative organisations as if it's this creative and ad hoc process that just kind of serendipitously happens within organisations. But the most innovative organisations have really clear processes that allow them to be innovative, that allow good suggestions to float to the top and get the attention of senior leaders. And without those processes and procedures and culture in place, it's very difficult for organisations to maintain agility and innovation. So I said we were going to focus on this level 2. Where the continuous improvement is managed, and that means managed at an individual level. So the individual improvement initiatives are understood, documented, prioritised against other initiatives. They're planned, we know when they're going to happen, who they're going to impact. They're carried out, they're performed by people who are empowered to carry out that improvement or change. And then measured, making sure that the change has actually been beneficial to the organisation and that we haven't snapped back to previous ways of working or the approaches before the improvement was made. And then finally, that they're controlled, that they're owned and understood. So all of these things lead to the question, well, how are we going to do that? When are we going to do it? And who is going to do it? Which is where the rigour and process around continuous improvement really comes into play. So how are we actually going to implement continuous improvement? So to think about this idea of continuous improvement maturity, we need to have at the heart of continuous improvement a process. And that process is going to be underpinned by a backlog, a list of suggestions, the potential improvements that the organisation could make. And they're going to come from all over your organisation at all levels. It's really misleading to think that only leaders can come up with good ideas and good suggestions. We need to have ways of listening to staff at all levels because they know their processes and systems and ways of working much better than our leaders do. So it's them that are going to come up with the good ideas, the suggestions, the opportunities to remove duplication, make processes more efficient without major investment. So that sits at the heart of a continuous improvement process. So people have to know how to suggest their ideas. We need to have a process of reviewing them, understanding which ones are going to have the greatest impact, understand the potential costs and risks associated, define priorities for those improvements, and actually instruct somebody to carry them out. So if we're going to have an operating process, a process that works well, we need to have in place a continuous improvement service. Those are the people that own that continuous improvement process, and they are in turn trying to continually encourage people to put forward suggestions and ideas and refine that process as well, making sure that it's not overly onerous and that people want to submit their ideas and suggestions because they can see that it's going to be taken forward and they can see that they are taken seriously by the organisation. Like anything within an organisation, if you want it to happen, you have to make it somebody's responsibility and define some budget to actually make that happen within an organisation. So that's how a continuous improvement service contributes. But none of this is going to matter unless we have a continuous improvement culture. So I've mentioned empowering staff to be able to make suggestions. They have the confidence to be able to put things forward, and they have the trust in the organisation that those ideas are going to be taken forward and evaluated and put into practice wherever possible. So that continuous improvement culture means that we care about quality and that everyone's job has two aspects: doing the job and thinking about how we can do the job better. We need to really embed that in people's thinking so that they're thinking and looking for opportunities to improve and contributing to that overall continuous moving forward of the organisation, looking for opportunities that we can take advantage of and thinking of ways that we can provide efficiencies and better ways of working. So what's this backlog going to do for us? Well, first of all, we might want to think about tooling. This doesn't have to mean that we start running a procurement and thinking about best of breed continuous improvement systems. We can start with something as simple as a shared list, a spreadsheet, something where we know that we can capture things and that we can manage access and track things appropriately. But we do need to think about the data that we're going to capture. That's both from people submitting ideas, but also some of the kind of audit information around it. So we want to know who submitted things and when. We want to know how long it takes between a submission to our process being able to consider those ideas. We want to be able to put some metrics on there. So we want to be able to think about things like date stamps and time stamps, so we can do those calculations with a minimal amount of effort. We need to think about who owns this data, where it lives, who has the ability to change things, and who has the ability to update this information as it starts to move through our process. And we need to think about access. We don't want to restrict things too much. We don't want to tie things down. But there's potential for some sensitive information to be in there, or for people to start to panic if they think that things are going to change when no change has actually been agreed. So we need to think about visibility and transparency, and balancing that with security, privacy, and not communicating things too early, and that's potentially going to cause worry within the organisation. So how is this process going to work? Well, we need to think about people's roles, responsibilities, who's actually involved, and what types of authority people have in this process. How are we going to make the decisions about which ideas are taken forward and which ones are not appropriate at the moment? So we need to think about all those different roles. How are we going to actually get these messages out there? A lot of organisations adopt something a bit like an advocate role or continuous improvement champion. You're probably already thinking about somebody when I've used that phrase, continuous improvement champion, because there's probably someone in your team or your business area who's doing this automatically, who's enthusiastic, who wants to encourage change and share best practice and share knowledge. Those people can really help embed a culture of continuous improvement and get everyone involved and make sure that everybody knows what the processes are and how they can contribute their ideas. We also need to make sure there's effective workflow, that things aren't getting stuck with a particular person or team, that we don't have bottlenecks and continuous improvement. We want to actually implement some of these changes in a timely fashion. So we don't want it to take weeks and months for different committees to debate and consider the merits of these things. This needs to be a quick process. So we need to make sure that we're scaling the process and that we have appropriate workflow so things don't get lost, and that people are getting messages back if their ideas are going to be taken forward, or if it's not going to be taken forward at this time. We need to communicate with people. We need to have a method of prioritizing the suggestions that we get, because we cannot take forward every idea that we get, and we're going to come on to that in just a minute. So we need to have a process for that, and we need to communicate that process as well. We need to consider that this, the continuous improvement is going to take some resources. It's going to potentially need some people. It's going to need things like training. Is probably not going to be anything like the scale of a major investment in digital transformation, but continuous improvement, just because it's small, doesn't necessarily mean that it's free. So we need to work out what the costs are going to be for the organisation and how we're going to provide the resources that it needs to work effectively. And we also need the ability to reflect on that process, so that the continuous improvement processes and systems that we put in place, that there's the time to reflect on those, to think about whether they're working, whether we're getting the number of ideas submitted that we're expecting, whether people know about it. It's really important to make sure that this, as with all processes within the organisation, is also subject to continuous improvement. So in terms of prioritisation, there's lots of ways that we could do that, but the most simple is to just think yes, no, or maybe. When we see an idea, the right people are able to evaluate it and give it one of these states, yes, no, or maybe. And so what's going to happen is we're going to get these suggestions, ideas, improvements. We're going to send those through the process. We're going to go onto the log. We're going to have this opportunity to prioritise. Hopefully we're going to do some of the things that actually get suggested. And as we do them, we're going to measure them. We're going to think, how long did it take us to do? What impact did it have? But the reason that we need to do this prioritisation is because we can't say yes to everything. But I'm really interested to know your thoughts on this. What would happen if we try to say yes to everything? You've probably worked in teams or organisations that try and do this. What are the pitfalls? What happens when we try to say yes to everything? Elliot said that we end up delivering nothing. Yeah, exactly. That is one of the real dangers, that we're trying to keep everybody happy. We're trying to manage everything on this list. We're trying to impact assess it all, and actually nothing gets to move forward. It's much better to concentrate on a smaller number, have a clear prioritization criteria for the things that we are going to be able to take forward. Yeah, people get overwhelmed. Yeah, imagine that we're kind of submitting these into a process. Likely the people involved in this process have got day jobs as well. They want to see improvements taken forward. But if we're trying to say yes to everything, trying to get keep everyone happy, the people involved in that process get overwhelmed. The people who are submitting ideas get really disheartened and disillusioned and don't maybe engage in future. Things that are really important and really impactful get delayed because we're distracted by maybe smaller or less valuable changes, lack of focus, that we're not delivering value in what we do. And the quality is going to be affected. Exactly right. Thank you for that, Megan. If we try and do everything, the quality of all of those changes is going to be reduced. And Abiola says we might run out of resources, which is absolutely true. Organisations have limited resources and we need to use them in the best way that we can. So this is why the prioritisation step in continuous improvement is absolutely critical. And if we're going to say maybe to things, it's very tempting to say maybe to a lot of things rather than give them a definitive yes or no, but that leads to its own problems. So we want to have things that we're clearly saying yes to, that meet our criteria, that address areas in the priority areas that we've identified, and then we actually do it and we allocate it to someone or a group, and we check that they've actually got the resources, skills and knowledge that they need to carry out that improvement. We might also say no, or we might send it to somewhere else. So something might come to us that is actually too big for a continuous improvement change, that actually is a whole project in itself that's being proposed. So we need to make sure that those things are being routed to the appropriate routes, to being triaged to other ways that things could get delivered within the organisation. Critically, we need to give those messages back to the people who are suggesting things. And if we say maybe, we need to make sure that we're clearly defining some conditions of what's going to move this maybe item to a yes or a no. Is it that we need more information? Is it that we need to better understand the impacts? Not just, yeah, that sounds like a vaguely good idea, we might do that down the line. We need to say yes or no now and understand what's going to move it from a yes or a no. But the thing about continuous improvement is that most things are going to end up in the no bucket. And that's not very popular. And we don't really want to lead with that when we're talking about continuous improvement. We don't want to say to our teams, we want you to submit as many ideas as possible so that we can say no to most of them. That is not a good way of selling continuous improvement. But that is the reality. A lot of the suggestions are not going to be practical. They're not going to have the impact. They're not going to have the widest reach. So we're going to have to say no to a lot of things. We need to find a way to do that in a way that doesn't turn people off the process or make them feel like that there was no point in doing it. We need to make it clear that it's still really valuable to hear all those solutions, to understand which processes people think can be improved. We might start to see a clustering of particular areas of the business, particular processes, or particular systems where a lot of suggestions are coming forward. And that's really valuable information. Even if we're saying, no, we can't fix those right now, it helps us inform future prioritisation and future decision making. It is a difficult message, but we still need to celebrate those ideas that have come through. So we need to find ways of making them visible, and we need to find ways of thanking people and recognising people for the suggestions that they've made, even if we decide to put them into the no bucket. So I mentioned the idea of a continuous improvement service. These are people who are going to have an active role in continuous improvement within the organisation. Part of that role is to check that the suggestions, the ideas that are coming forward are aligned to our organisational strategy. If we don't have that alignment and we're just making random and fairly chaotic decisions about what things to prioritise and what improvements to make, it's likely that the improvements that we're making will become misaligned from the organisational strategy. So thinking about how our strategy, what our strategy is, and how the types of improvements that we're seeing can align to that strategy, and using that as part of our prioritisation process where we're saying yes, no, and maybe to things, is really helping people to focus their ideas, making sure that they're putting forward things that are aligned to organisational strategy. It also creates the opportunity to make sure that we've got accountability in this process. Sometimes the people putting forward the ideas are the ones who can actually make that change. Sometimes it's somebody else that needs to make the change on their behalf, but still potentially involving them in the implementation or looking at what that change entails. So we need to create an accountability so that if you've been asked to do something, if you've been told, yep, you've made that suggestion, that sounds brilliant, go away and do it. We want that feedback loop to understand whether they did do it, what blockers or what situations arose that made it more difficult for them to deliver that change. But we need to have that feedback loop to make sure things are actually happening that we've agreed to and prioritised. In some cases, we might want to apply some measurement. Now, this is not necessarily going out with stopwatches and clipboards and seeing how long processes used to take and how long they take now. Part of it can just be around surveying teams around their level of satisfaction on a process or system. We're also looking externally to the organisation and talking to customers to see whether they've noticed some of the small changes that we've made and whether they have actually made their lives easier. So measurement doesn't have to be a massive investment in time. It can be as simple as making inquiries and seeing if people's perceptions are improved. And finally, the continuous improvement service need to be the ones that are communicating about continuous improvement. They need to be thinking about raising people's awareness, knowing that these processes and systems are in place, potentially providing things like training so that people know what continuous improvement is, what their role is, and how they can contribute to it. But also, crucially, shouting about successes where we've made changes, even small ones that have made a small number of people's lives easier or made a particular process or system easier to interact with or easier to find. We really need to highlight these positive case studies to encourage more people to feel that they can bring their suggestions forward and make small improvements in how they work as well. So I want to highlight measurement because part of us identifying the impacts is understanding whether if this was a good use of our time, investment in resources and continuous improvement, or whether things have actually got a bit out of hand. Sometimes we can start saying yes to small changes and it has a bit of a snowball effect, and actually a project is kind of happening without any understanding within the organisation that this is happening. So we want to make sure that continuous improvement isn't a backdoor route to delivering what should be managed change through a project or programme route. So we want to keep an eye on the impact that these changes are having, and making sure that that making a large number of changes in one place shouldn't actually be managed in some kind of delivery wrapper like a project. So I've already said that continuous improvement culture is absolutely critical to making change work, to making sure that people feel empowered to make suggestions about improvements. And this means that we need to make sure that our organisational values are encouraging people to be interested in things like continuous learning, continuous improvement, growth and contribution to the organisation. And by looking at what your organisational values are, if you have a set of values articulated, it can be really useful to think about, well, how can continuous improvement contribute to that value? And tying continuous improvement to both our organisational strategy and culture really helps it to land and not just be seen as another fad or another something on top of people's day job that we're asking them to do. So we're saying that this is critical to our organisation, it aligns to our strategy, and it relates to delivering against our values. I've mentioned celebrating success, and that can really motivate people for getting involved in this process. We might also want to create motivations like including this in people's objectives or introducing incentives. If you've got some kind of organisational internal rewards scheme or annual awards process, trying to build something in like best continuous improvement initiative or best suggestion, even if it's not something that we've been able to implement yet, really provides the incentive for people to know that their ideas and suggestions are going to be recognised. Part of celebrating success is making sure that we are highlighting role models, and that's at all levels. The types of people that I already mentioned who are interested in fixing things, making things a bit better for themselves, their colleagues and their customers, holding them up as continuous improvement role models so that people can see that acting in that way, acting in alignment with our values and our strategy is really important, and that it's also valued by our organisation. Maintaining a leadership focus on the area of continuous improvement is really important. We want leaders to be mentioning continuous improvement, the initiatives that they've become aware of, and even suggestions that they've made. This makes a big difference. If leaders talk about continuous improvement, blog about it, use the language around improvement and quality, it makes it real for people, and it integrates it into our day-to-day lives. We also have to be careful about setting expectations. I mentioned already that we need to convince people that their job has two parts: doing the job that they're in and also improving that work, the way that they do their work. If we set that as an expectation for every role, then we're building in continuous improvement as a building block into everybody's role, everybody's jobs. And it can feel like, oh, it's something else I'm being asked to do on top of all of my busy workload and all the initiatives I'm already involved in. But if we can set it as an expectation that those are the key aspects of everyone's role, doing the role and becoming better at it, then we're embedding continuous improvement from the start. I want to highlight at this point a book called No Hard Feelings, which is an illustrated book. And one of the illustrations that I really like is this one. It shows here the central section of this Venn diagram, and it says that these are the ideas that people are willing to share when they don't feel that they belong, that they're a little bit worried about how they fit in or how their idea might be received. But all of these are the ideas that people share when they do feel safe. They feel that they have the psychological safety, they feel they have the trust of the teams and their leaders to be able to put forward their ideas and suggestions. And for me, this really highlights a key aspect of continuous improvement culture, that people need to feel safe and feel respected, that their ideas are going to be taken seriously, even if they're not taken forward. So the culture within any organisation is really shaped by the worst behaviours that leaders are willing to tolerate. And we can think of behaviours in relation to continuous improvement as appearing on this spectrum. At one end, the very best behaviours, those continuous improvement champions that we talked about. And on the other end, the worst behaviours, the people are really detracting from continuous improvement, saying that'll never work, we've tried it before, all of those kind of behaviours that we've all come across in our organisation. But what I'm really interested to hear from you in the chat are what are some of those really great behaviours in relation to continuous improvement? What do we want to see people doing, and what do we want to encourage them to do? And then what are the worst things that they could do? How could they sabotage continuous improvement? Let me know in the chat. What have you seen as some of these like really positive role modelling behaviours? And what have you also seen as people who don't want to take continuous improvement seriously, don't want to contribute to improving processes and systems within their organisations? What do those people do? How do they throw bricks at this? One of the best behaviours that we see is people referring people into the continuous improvement process. So when you're overhearing conversations like, oh, wouldn't it be great if, or I wish this thing did this, then we have people who throughout the business who are saying, oh, well, did you know that there is a continuous improvement process and you can submit that idea and it'll get considered? Yeah, having good visibility and encouraging others to contribute, that's a really important one. Thanking people, saying that I really appreciate the ideas that you put forward. Not having a blame culture and allowing people to fail fast, that's really important. Thank you, Elliot. Jess has mentioned an open door policy. So people can talk about continuous improvements before they submit them. That's a really good idea, being able to talk it through with a colleague or a leader before you put it out there, just to make sure that it makes sense to other people and they can help you spot any flaws or any unintended consequences of that improvement. People coming on training when they've been encouraged by others who have already been on training, that's really great. We'll get that kind of word of mouth going. Thank you, Rebecca, where people have found it valuable to come on that training, to learn more about continuous improvement, and then recommending it to others. That has a really powerful effect in an organisation. And some of the worst behaviours, this is from Jenny, is when leaders deflect conversations about continuous improvement. They don't allow us time to consider the changes. Yeah, where leaders are kind of making snap decisions. Oh no, that's not going to work, or that's in conflict with this. We really need to give people the time to work through the possible implications, to think about any risks associated with what they're suggesting, and think about the impacts, not just on their area, but on the wider business, unintended impacts on our customers, suppliers. So yeah, dismissing things too quickly, that's really a poor behaviour in relation to CI. And a good behaviour is allowing that time and space and inviting suggestions and feedback. For example, some leaders build this regularly into their team meetings. What could we be doing better as a team? How could we make small changes to our processes, systems, templates, documents, outputs that would make a small but impactful difference to us or the people that use our outputs? Great suggestions there. Thank you, everyone. So what we've talked about is how we can actually implement continuous improvement. And I'd really like to hear any suggestions of what's worked for you. So what have you seen work well? We've mentioned practical things like having training and continuous improvement champions. What else has worked well for you? Has it been leaders encouraging people to take part in this? Has it been some kind of reward scheme that has highlighted where people have made improvements and suggestions to their organisations? What's worked for you? What do you see working well? How do we encourage people to put those ideas forward, to make those suggestions? What's worked well for actually implementing CI? Having an approachable change team. Yeah, getting out there saying, we're not scary, come to us, talk to us about your ideas. Seeing other people, seeing people's recommendations actually being acted upon. Yeah, we really need to show those positive case studies that people think it's worthwhile to put something forward because change is actually possible. Focusing on different areas of the business, yeah, picking a specific area and saying, how could this area be improved? Is it the processes? Something like recruitment is an area where lots of people across the organisation would probably have some really useful suggestions of how that process could be improved, whether they have recently joined the organisation or whether they've been a recruiting manager. How often do we offer up a process and say, let us know what you think, give us your feedback, give us your suggestions? Safe spaces, getting real feedback which can be added upon. Yeah, starting those conversations. That might be a regular drop-in session where people can come along, talk about their ideas. I'm thinking about submitting this as a suggestion for improvement. What do people think? Creating communities of practice, that's a great one. Sharing ideas and innovation about continuous improvement and how collaboration can help move the organisation forward. Thank you for that suggestion. Getting that senior buy-in, yeah, is so important. Getting senior leaders talking about it, allowing them to gather momentum, and so we have some senior leaders taking ownership as well, and allowing others to move forward with their ideas. Dragon's Den type scheme, that's a great suggestion, allowing people to pitch their ideas, potentially getting some money and resources associated with it as well, and getting some kind of reward, showcasing their ideas if they're taken forward. Loads of really great suggestions for what's working and what keeps that continuous improvement culture moving forward. So I just want to summarise this process that we've looked at, that continuous improvement has at its heart this place where continuous improvement initiatives are logged, recorded. That might be some kind of fancy system, but it could be something as simple as a spreadsheet or shared list on one of our existing platforms. That forms the heart of continuous improvement, but around that we need an effective process that people know how to engage with, and that we're also thinking about things like impact, prioritisation, and metrics around improvement as well. That needs to be supported by a continuous improvement process, people who are willing to raise awareness of continuous improvement and create accountability when we've agreed things that should move forward, ensure that they actually do. And none of this is effective without a continuous improvement culture. So we've talked about things like leadership focus, raising awareness, building that expectation of two things: that we want you to do your job, we want you to find ways to be even better at your job and provide better services and products and processes for our internal and external customers as well. So this is where we started. We talked about the focus on continuous improvement has dipped over the last few years because organisations have been very preoccupied with the idea of digital transformation. But now is a great time for organisations to reinvigorate their continuous improvement initiatives and efforts. We talked about what continuous improvement was. It's that small incremental change with a focus on improvement, and that marginal gains theory that we can make small changes in a number of places which add up to big impacts for our organisation overall. And we talked about how to actually go about implementing and embedding CI. Loads of great suggestions in the chat. Thank you everybody who's put forward their positive behaviours around continuous improvement, and things like leading from the top and creating those incentives. We need to think about this. We need to have a strategy of how continuous improvement is going to be implemented. We can't just say, okay, here's a form on the intranet, fill that in, let us know your suggestions. We need to think about this a bit more strategically. How are we going to put in place those processes, services and culture which are really going to make continuous improvement succeed? So I am Christina Lovelock, Director of Community at Herd Consulting. We'd love to continue this conversation with you. You can connect with me individually on LinkedIn or follow our Herd Consulting page. As I mentioned, all of our Leeds Digital Festival sessions are being recorded and going to be available on our YouTube channel. So please also follow that if you're interested in some of the other topics that we've been talking about. At Herd, we provide consultancy and coaching to help you get serious about continuous improvement. So please do get in touch with us at hello@Herd Consulting if you'd like to know more. Thank you everybody who has contributed to this session, and I hope this has inspired you to think about continuous improvement in your organisation and how you can really get serious and how you can make it stick. Thank you so much for your time this morning, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.